I think the thing that surprised me most about it was the models had been climbing in their ability to find vulnerabilities. It was a particularly large jump. Some of the early companies that we gave this to said things like, this is a super weapon. This is a super weapon. You should have to own a gun license to use it. Please don't release this. And then I think there are some players who are YOLOing, who pull the risk dial too far, and I'm very concerned.
Who is YOLOing?
So that's a question I'm not going to answer.
That is Dario Amodei, the co-founder and CEO of Anthropic, an AI company worth nearly $1 trillion. He named it after the Greek word for human, and he is widely considered one of the good guys. Listen to how the supposed good guy describes the thing he is building.
The experience I've had for my whole career, and certainly the whole time at Anthropic, is that there's this kind of smooth exponential. And the experience of the smooth exponential is nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. Little things happen, and then zoom, it goes crazy. So, I was watching this graph for a while, and I said, oh yeah, we'll probably become the AI company with, the most revenue and the most valuations sometime around this time. And indeed, it has happened. We're just keeping in mind all the things we usually keep in mind. How do we train good models? How do we put them in good products? How do we make sure that everything's safe? There are many valid disagreements to be had on safety. We certainly had some of those disagreements with them, but that alone is not sufficient to leave. When you feel that you can't trust someone, when you feel that their values are not what they say they are, when you feel that they're not honest, that makes it very hard to continue to work with a company, to continue to trust the company. And look, at the end of the day, why argue with someone when you don't have the same vision and you don't trust them? The way to resolve it is you go off and do your thing, they go off and do their thing. Every previous powerful technology we've seen in history was either built by the government or originated with the government. So nuclear weapons, obviously, initially built by the government. The internet, GPS, cell phones. AI is the first technology that's been built in the private sector, and where government has not really had a serious role and is coming in late to the game. I think that's actually a dangerous and unstable situation. It is not the situation I would have chosen. This technology, I'm scared of companies having it, but I'm also scared of government having it. And then we need basic regulation of the technology. More and more, as I've seen what we've seen with Mythos, I think we need to start doing pre-release testing, required pre-release testing, testing and auditing of the models. It's very funny to me how there's a particular group of people in the tech world in Silicon Valley. They started with a position of even having transparency around this technology, even export control. This is all just totally, it'll apocalyptically destroy our potential to create the technology. It'll kill innovation. And then as soon as they see the first real danger, which I've been expecting all along, there's all this talk of nationalization and the government should just seize it. Come on, folks, here, you're yo-yoing from the most extreme anti-regulatory, if you look at us the wrong way, you're destroying the industry, to, this completely communist, the government should grab it all. We need a more sensible, moderate approach. That's the one we've been favoring all along because we've understood the power of this technology. We're not panicking, we're not denying it. We see the smooth exponential and we're responding to it appropriately.
So there is the man at the center of it telling you how this arrives. Not with a warning, but as a smooth line on a graph that does nothing, and then explodes. He left OpenAI because he decided he could not trust the people running it. And now he admits the most powerful technology ever built sits in private hands in a situation he himself calls dangerous and unstable. He is scared of the companies holding it, he is scared of anyone taking it from them, and the people around him swing between no rules at all and seizing it outright. Now listen to what the thing actually does.
You don't want a model that lies accidentally or intentionally, right? Lying we call hallucinations, it makes something up. The models are just trained to predict the next word, so sometimes they don't know and they just invent something. Models sometimes, as we've shown in our research, can purposely try to deceive you. We have to make sure that doesn't happen in production models that we expose to customers. And then there's a lot of work around harmlessness, just making sure that the model is not accidentally producing information that is wrong or harmful or could cause someone to do something bad.
I think we could have this very unusual combination of very fast GDP growth and high unemployment, or at least
underemployment or low-wage jobs, a lot of low-wage jobs, high inequality.
We are seeing right now that AI is making people more productive, but that's the usual hump. You automate 90% of the job, great, people are 10 times more productive in the other 10% because they're 10 times more leveraged. But eventually it gets close to 100%. Now, the sequel to that is, well, then you have to find something else for them to do. Right now, AI makes the software engineers more productive, even though AI writes all the code or almost all the code. But we're already starting to see the beginning of, like, there may be some people that it's not making more productive, that it's better for the AI to just do the thing.
It's very uncomfortable. Artificial intelligence is this force that is far bigger than we are. I think it's a thing that we have to talk about, we have to advocate for it. Ultimately, it's up to society to solve it. This is bigger than one company.
I want to be really clear and push back hard against this. In every interview, I talk about the possible ways to address these risks, from tax and macroeconomic policy to what the new jobs are. In the adolescence of technology, I have like 5 pages where I lay out the difference between tasks and jobs, why this time is different than other times.
Because if there's that much unemployment, is that not how revolutions start?
Yeah, no, this is the outcome we want to prevent. This is absolutely the outcome we want to prevent. This is more a debate about what the proper use of AI by the government is. And AI is an emerging new technology. We don't understand the ways in which it's reliable or unreliable. We don't understand the ways in which it promotes our values or undermines our values. And so one of the things that I thought was important was to establish a precedent on some of the use cases we think are good, which frankly is most of them, and some of the use cases that we're concerned about.
I hope the best, but plan for the worst. For me, this is the most important work I've ever done. For some people, it feels like this is the last job because it could mean the end of work. And I think for other people, it's existential to get this right. And so there's just this kind of burden.
Our view has always been, we ultimately are responsible as an industry, the industry that's developing this technology, for thinking through what are the risks, what are the bad things that could happen, and if some of those things come to pass, what is our role in helping to fix them? That is our job, right? We should not just say, well, we were just trying to grow the product and suddenly there's an entire generation of young women who have eating disorders or who have mental health problems because, whoops, we were just trying to grow the product. That's not the stance that I think any technology company should take. I don't think that's the stance that we're trying to take.
So there is the part the marketing leaves out. The system at the heart of his company can, in his own words, purposely try to deceive you, and he admits no one understands when it is reliable or whether it serves human values or works against them. And the destination he describes is fast growth with mass unemployment, a machine that does not stop at 90% of your job but climbs toward all of it. In his words, the last job, the end of work. He even says it himself that this much unemployment is how revolutions start. Now listen to what he has already let it do in war.
It's a bit like selling, nuclear weapons to North Korea.
I've been very outspoken about the need for export controls on chips to China. I say this because I think it would be really bad for America, for the state of democracy in the world, for China to be ahead in AI capabilities. And it's like some of the chip makers obviously don't agree with that view, but it hasn't stopped me from saying it. Even after we've signed more partnerships, I'm sure they wish we didn't say these things, but these things are what I believe. We're all adults here. We can work together on one thing while disagreeing about another thing. The world changes. Like, my view of this technology, when I see Russia invading Ukraine, when I see the risk of China invading Taiwan, it worries me that we have a kind of resurgent authoritarian bloc, that they're very aggressive and that we need to defend ourselves. You're asking, like, do you believe in this country, right? Do you want this country to be a more powerful actor rather than a less powerful actor on the world stage? I do. I'm a patriot. It's not up to me. If we provide a technology, it's not up to us to say you can do this military operation and you can't do that military operation. Now, I might privately believe that this military operation makes sense and that military operation is a bad idea, but we're not going to deny the technology. You have to leave policy in the hands of the military decision makers. Mistakes that happen in warfare are really, really terrible. Like, this is a really terrible thing to happen. We were willing to risk the future of our company to limit how these models are used. And you're talking about is a use case that doesn't even violate our red lines. We're worried that there will be 100 times as much with use cases that do violate our red line. I would say, I think overall, the use of these models is appropriate. I think it's good on net. Military decision makers make terrible mistakes, even at the best of times, and I don't know if we're in the best of time. Imagine if you had a world in which, not Claude, because we haven't allowed it, but someone else's AI model, the AI model just makes the decision and the human never sees it. That's what we were standing up for. That's what we were fighting against. The principle that was obeyed here is a human. A human makes the final decision. I don't know what role Claude or any other AI had, but like, if this isn't an illustration why that principle is so important, I don't know what is. If we have no limits on how it's used, then I think it could be more likely to cause it. You've seen Dr. Strangelove, right? The premise of it was like you have a doomsday device that automatically fires nuclear weapons when it thinks nuclear weapons are being fired at it. What could go wrong, right? I think the way conflicts happen is that the two sides jump at each other. They misunderstand each other. And when we don't have proper oversight of this technology, I think those kinds of accidents are more likely to happen. Now, I think if AI is used in an appropriate way, in not even warfare, but just intelligence collection, let's say we're able to predict an invasion of Taiwan or a new movement in Ukraine, our adversaries will think twice about conducting some kind of invasion or military operation if we know everything that they're doing.
So there is the self-described patriot explaining why it is not his place to decide which operations are right, only to hand over the tool on a technology he compares to nuclear weapons while his rivals are, in his word, YOLOing. He admits the people pulling the trigger make terrible mistakes even at the best of times, and that he is not sure these are the best of times. He reaches for Dr. Strangelove, the doomsday machine that fires on its own. And the prize in his own framing is a world where they know everything that everyone is doing. Now listen to the odds he puts on all of it.
I try very hard to communicate and always be straightforward and honest. I get up in front of the company every 2 weeks and just talk for an hour about just what's on my mind, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the outside world. It's totally uncensored. And not only does it build trust, it's very freeing for me, where I feel that I have 3,000 people who are on the same page as me. That is an incredible amplifier and is one of the most useful things in handling the pressure. Then when we have to confront an external challenge, stand up to some very difficult situations that we've seen in the last few months, that is what allows us to have a consistent and coherent position. And I think it's an incredible advantage because I never feel like I'm alone.
It wasn't like, oh, it's so powerful and let's decide who gets the power. It was a very specific concern around cybersecurity. And so the way that we decided who to give the model to was grounded in that specific fear. I think we've tried to be as publicly, we're trying our best to make this decision well, but like we might not do it perfectly.
We have suffered enormously commercially from not releasing this model. This model has incredibly accelerated research within Anthropic. It would do the same in the outside world if we were to release it. Throughout the entire history of Anthropic has been trade-offs, right? In some ideal world, you would prefer to, before you release the first chatbot, you could spend years studying every possible thing that could go wrong with it. Now, we did delay the initial release of Claude, but we did it for a few months. So everything is a trade-off. Now that we're in, I would describe as a commercially leading position, we can afford to move the dial even further towards being careful, right? That's what the Mythos release was about, right? It's very hard to do something like that if you're not the leading player. I worry that something will go wrong. Are we doing literally everything we can? We're certainly trying our best. We're certainly trying very hard. What I want is to create a situation where if this set of people can't do it, it couldn't be done. You can't guarantee success, but maybe you can guarantee that.
It was really scary to read that. We were obviously extremely relieved that he and his family were okay. In general, I think this is a time technologically, politically, where unfortunately, there's just a lot more rhetoric and words that I think can lead to bad outcomes and bad things happening. I hope that this is a topic we can all just debate as peacefully as possible.
This is like a less savory aspect of the exponential, right? That as AI gets more and more of a big thing, it becomes just such a big deal to society. There's more attention on it.
There's been massive backlash against social media. Countries are starting to ban it. Could that happen to AI?
I think it's absolutely possible. If the social media companies could go back in time and see the world that they see today, would they do anything differently? I like to think the answer to that is yes. I don't know. We view it as our job to try and proactively think about all of the things that could go wrong. Because if we don't, who's going to?
This is why we're trying to get this right the first time, instead of waiting for things to go wrong, then scrambling to justify why it's all okay. The main way I could see AI being, banned or blocked is if something really went wrong. And if something really went wrong, then maybe it deserves to be. Starting from a position of distrust, if you don't know anything about me, if you don't know anything about Anthropic, is pretty rational. I think Silicon Valley has lost a lot of the world's trust and kind of has to re-earn it. And the message we're trying to send is we're actually different, and that has to be earned in things that we actually do. The figure I most identified with was Leo Szilard, who was the one who first had the idea that there could be a chain reaction. My view is we're not going to get through this with larger than life personalities or figures who try and be at the center of everything. In some ways, I actually see Oppenheimer as a failure case, as what should not happen. There's a lot of powerful actors who have interests here, and the only way it's going to end well for everyone is if there's basically checks and balances everywhere. My view is that probability comes from the very straightforward recipe of the technology, the existence of many countries in the world, the existence of many companies within an economy and new ones created. If half of what we do within the company is try and, reduce the risk as much as we can, but it's never going to be zero. It can both be the case that your airline company is 10 times safer than all the other airline companies, but if someone comes and asks you, can you guarantee that your airplane will never crash? I mean, how could you possibly?
But if there was a 25% chance of an airplane crashing, you wouldn't get on that plane.
That's right, 25% is too high. We're trying to make that probability much, much lower.
So that is the warning, and it does not come from a critic on the outside. It comes from the man who calls himself the careful one, the responsible one, the good guy in the race, and this is what the good guy tells you. That it is a super weapon, that it lies on purpose, that no one fully understands it, that it is already helping decide who lives and dies, and that there is something like a 1 in 4 chance it ends in collapse. Sit with the number he chose. He would not board a plane with a 1 in 4 chance of crashing. No one would. And yet, the recipe he describes, many countries, many companies, each racing the others, each unwilling to be the one who slows down, is the plane. He is not promising he can land it. He is telling you he is trying to make the odds a little less catastrophic and that even he cannot bring them to zero. And notice who is in the room for this: a handful of companies, a handful of founders deciding which values get written into the mind, which militaries get the targeting tool, who sits inside the circle and who is left outside it. He says the only thing that makes it survivable is checks and balances everywhere. Look around, they are not there yet. Jeffrey Hinton left Google to warn the machines may slip our control. Roman Yampolsky says they never could be controlled at all. And now the most responsible man in the room compares himself not to the scientist who built the bomb, but to the one who first realized the chain reaction was possible. Subscribe, because when the good guy in the race is the one telling you it might be a super weapon with a 1 in 4 chance of ending us, the only people not worried are the ones who are not listening.